building AI applications. Especially when you get past just simple prompts and into these more complex workflows and intelligent agents, it can sometimes feel like you're looking at this sheer cliff face of code. It often feels intimidating. It takes a lot of time. And honestly, it's a huge barrier for many people who have great ideas for AI, but maybe don't have that deep programming background.
Right.
But what if you could sort of climb that cliff using like pre-built steps and ropes? What if you could visually design these really powerful AI solutions, maybe drag and drop your way to a working AI agent?
That's exactly the space we're exploring today. We're doing a deep dive into FlowiseAI.
Okay.
The sources we looked at describe it as an open source, low-code platform, and it's specifically built for creating generative AI applications, things like AI agents, complex workflows, using large language models, LLMs.
And we've gathered quite a bit of material for this, haven't we? We're looking at the official FlowiseAI docs, some getting started guides, articles with practical tips, tutorials.
Yeah, a really good mix. Official info, but also practical, hands-on perspectives. It gives you a solid foundation, hopefully covering not just the what and why, but really the how you actually use it.
So our mission today is basically to unpack FlowiseAI. We want to figure out what it is, how you get started with it, look at its main features, the core components, sort of the building blocks, and then see what kinds of things you can actually build with that visual interface.
Exactly. And really understand how it bridges that gap, the gap between complex AI theory and actually building something practical without needing to be a hardcore coder.
And for you listening, understanding a tool like FlowiseAI, well, it could be incredibly valuable. It might offer a real shortcut to bring your AI ideas to life. So maybe you want to automate some tedious tasks or build smarter chatbots for customer interaction, or maybe you just want to play around with LLMs without getting totally bogged down in Python code.
Yeah.
This dive should give you the clarity to get started. Okay, let's unpack this then, starting right at the beginning. What is FlowiseAI really at its core? The sources seem pretty consistent here. Open source, low code.
Yes.
And the big thing seems to be this visual interface, this node-based workflow system.
That visual node-based approach is absolutely central. Think about it like this. Normally, building these AI apps means writing code to talk to different APIs, manage how data flows, handle errors, orchestrate different models and tools. It's a lot of code.
Right.
FlowiseAI kind of abstracts that away. It represents these different functions like, say, loading a PDF, calling an OpenAI model, or using a web search tool as these distinct nodes you see on a screen, like a canvas.
Okay.
And then you just connect these nodes with lines. That defines how the information flows, the sequence of operations. It's almost like building a flowchart, but for your AI logic.
So how does that visual low-code thing fundamentally change how you build this stuff?
Well, the sources really emphasize that it dramatically lowers the barrier to entry. It makes it much more accessible. If you can grasp the logic of what you want to do, the steps involved, you can probably start building in Flowise, even if you're not a coder. It kind of democratizes AI development.
Democratizes. Interesting. So it's not just for AI engineers anymore.
Exactly. It makes it feasible for developers who want to prototype fast, maybe data analysts, product managers, even what people call citizen developers, someone with expertise in, say, marketing, who wants to build an AI tool for their team.
Right.
Because it makes the whole workflow visible and easy to change. It speeds up testing and iteration. You can be more experimental, more creative with how you integrate AI.
Okay, so the visual part is the how. What about the what or the why? What's the main problem Flowise is trying to solve?
Its core purpose, based on everything we read, is really about simplifying how you create AI-powered solutions, specifically workflows that use these powerful large language models. LLMs can do amazing things, generate text, summarize, translate, answer questions, classify stuff, but actually plugging those abilities into a real application that users can interact with or that connects to other systems, that still takes a lot of work.
Yeah, it's not trivial.
Right. Flowise provides the framework, the structure to build applications that use LLMs to do useful things and do it in a way that's structured, repeatable, and easier to manage.
Can you give us an example from the sources?
Yeah.
Something concrete that shows this simplification.
Sure. One source mentioned using LLMs to analyze customer feedback. Let's say you have survey results or support tickets.
Okay.
Normally, you'd write code to connect to wherever that data is, pull it out, maybe clean it up, then make API calls to an LLM service, OpenAI, Anthropic, whatever, handle the responses, figure out the sentiment or key topics, and then save that analysis somewhere.
Right. Quite a few steps involving code.
Yeah. With Flowise, you could build a visual flow. Maybe a document loader node pulls in the feedback. It connects to a text splitter if the feedback is long. That goes to an LLM chain node configured for, say, sentiment analysis. Then maybe an output parser structures the result. And finally, a beta store node saves it.
Ah, I see. So you're visually connecting blocks that represent each step instead of writing the code for each connection and function call.
Exactly. You're replacing potentially hundreds of lines of code with this visual diagram of connected nodes.
That makes the key difference super clear. It's not about getting rid of all the complexity, maybe, but shifting the focus, moving away from the raw coding challenges towards designing the actual logic of the AI process.
You got it. It bridges that gap between the power of the AI models and actually using them in the real world.
Making AI more actionable for more people.
That's the idea. Letting you focus on designing the intelligence in the workflow, not just wrestling with infrastructure and API calls.
So who really benefits most from a platform like this? Who's the target audience?
Well, looking at how it's designed and the problems it tackles, you can see several groups benefiting. Definitely developers, maybe for rapid prototyping, quickly trying out an AI idea before building it fully in code, or even deploying simpler apps directly.
Makes sense.
Data scientists or analysts could use it too, building custom analysis pipelines with LLMs without needing deep software engineering skills. Product managers might find it useful for visually mocking up and testing AI features, making the logic tangible. And yeah, those citizen developers we mentioned, people with specific domain knowledge who want to automate tasks in their field.
So pretty broad appeal for anyone needing to build with AI but wants to do it faster or more easily.
Yeah, especially if you value speed and accessibility over, say, fine-grained control of every single line of code.
That gives us a really solid grasp of what FlowiseAI is all about. The next big question is, okay, how do you actually get your hands on it? How do you start using it? The sources mentioned it's quite flexible in terms of setup.
It really is. That flexibility is a definite plus. They seem to understand that users have different levels of technical skill, different needs for where things run, different goals.
Okay.
So the documentation and guides basically lay out 3 main ways to get started, and then there are some more technical methods underneath those.
Let's break those down. What's the first one? Probably the most common way people might try it out initially.
Yeah.
Local installation.
Exactly. Running it directly on your own computer, your laptop or desktop. It's generally pretty straightforward and great for just trying things out for development or if you're really concerned about data privacy.
What do you need to get that working?
The main thing mentioned is having Node.js installed, specifically a fairly recent version, they say v18.15.0 or v20 or higher.
Okay, Node.js.
Once you have Node ready, the installation usually uses npm, which is Node's package manager. The command looks really simple. npm install -g Flowise. That installs it globally.
Maybe G for global, right?
Yep. And then to actually start the Flowise server and get to the visual interface, you run npx flowise start. That fires up the server, and you usually access it in your web browser at a local address, typically http://localhost/bot300.
And what are the main advantages of running it locally like that?
The docs highlight 2 key things: data privacy and offline use. If you're working with sensitive data company secrets, personal info that you can't or don't want to send out to cloud services, running locally keeps everything on your machine. That's huge for certain industries or use cases.
Yeah, absolutely critical sometimes.
And the offline part is simple too. Once it's installed and running, you can build and use your workflows without needing an internet connection, as long as the specific LLMs or tools you're using within Flowise are also available offline. Like if you're running an LLM locally using something like Olama.
So who's the ideal user for this local setup?
Well, definitely anyone dealing with that sensitive data, developers wanting a quick isolated sandbox for testing, and anyone who needs to work in places with spotty or no internet. It's a very accessible way to start without relying on external services.
Okay, local makes sense. But what if you want to make your Flowise app accessible to others or scale it up? The sources talked about cloud deployment options.
Right, that's the next level. Making it available remotely, sharing it, or running it for real users in production. The documentation here is actually quite detailed. They list a whole bunch of platform as a service path options where you can host Flowise.
Platform as a service. Pass.
Okay. And they kind of split these into 2 groups based on the type of cloud provider.
What kind of platforms are we talking about? Big names, newer ones?
Both, actually. It's a pretty broad list. Under what they call established cloud providers, which usually need more manual setup but give you lots of control, they list the usual suspects: AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform, GCP, and Alibaba Cloud.
The big players.
Yeah. Then there's a category called modern cloud providers. These often focus more on automation and making deployment simpler for developers. And the list here is long. Render, Railway, Replit, DigitalOcean's app platform, Hugging Face Spaces, Kubernetes, often using Helm charts they provide, Alestio, Repo Cloud, Celos, Zebra, quite a few.
Wow, that is a long list, especially the modern ones. What's the main difference the sources point out between those two types, established versus modern?
The general idea presented is that the modern providers are often easier to get started with. They try to streamline deployment, handle a lot of the server management for you automatically, so less technical know-how needed, potentially faster to get running.
But there's a trade-off.
Sometimes, yeah. That ease of use might mean less flexibility. You might have less control over the underlying server, the networking details. The established providers, while maybe having a steeper learning curve initially, tend to offer much more fine-grained control and flexibility. Better for complex setups or integrating into existing enterprise cloud setups.
And the overall benefit of putting Flowise in the cloud, regardless of the provider.
Primarily scalability and remote access. Cloud platforms let you easily scale your Flowise instance up if lots of people start using your app, or scale it down to save costs. And obviously deploying to the cloud means you can access the Flowise editor and you're running applications from anywhere, which is great for collaboration or just wider availability.
I recall one of the articles, I think it was Geeky Gadgets, specifically mentioned Render as one of these cloud options.
Yes, that's right. That article used Render as a specific example of a platform where you could deploy Flowise, comparing it alongside the Flowise cloud option. It just helps make the cloud deployment idea more concrete.
Right, which brings us neatly to the third main option, Flowise Cloud itself. This sounds like a paid managed service.
Correct. The Flowise team offers this directly. The sources, especially the Getting Started info, recommend this path if you're not really experienced with managing servers or deploying applications to cloud infrastructure yourself.
So it's kind of the easy button if you want to avoid the technical setup?
Pretty much. One source literally says it saves you the headache of managing infrastructure.
Uh-huh.
So if you're listening and you're excited about the visual building part, but really don't want to deal with server config, databases, updates, all that backend stuff, Flowise Cloud handles it for you. You sign up, you get access to the Flowise editor, hosted and managed, lets you focus completely on designing your AI flows.
That sounds perfect for someone who just wants to build quickly without getting into the weeds of DevOps.
Exactly. It caters directly to that user who wants the AI building power without the back-end complexity.
Okay, so those are the three main routes: local, general cloud platforms, and the managed Flowise Cloud. But the docs also mentions more technical methods for deployment, right? Like Docker.
Yes, for users with more specific technical needs, the Get Started docs go deeper. They cover using Docker, which is super popular for containerizing applications. You can use pre-built Flowise Docker images or build your own image from the source code using Docker Compose or just standard Docker commands.
Containerization.
There's also a developer setup section. This is for if you want to clone the actual Flowise code repository, use a package manager called PNPM, build the project yourself, and run it locally, either for development or production. Useful if you want to maybe contribute to Flowise or need a very custom setup.
Right.
And they briefly mention an enterprise setup, which sounds like it involves specific license keys and contacting their support, likely for larger organizations needing dedicated support or features.
Seeing all these different technical methods, what does that tell us overall?
It really highlights that while Flowise aims for accessibility with its low-code interface, it's built on a solid technical base that can scale. It supports everyone, from a beginner playing locally to developers using Docker, right up to large enterprises needing production-grade, supported deployments. The platform grows with your technical needs.
Okay, great. So you've picked your method, you've got Flowise running, you open it up in your browser, and you see this visual canvas. The core way you interact, as we've said, is this node-based workflow system.
That's right. That visual canvas is where you build everything. Every function, every piece of data, every step in your AI logic is a node.
Like a little box on the screen.
Exactly. You literally drag these nodes onto the canvas from a menu. You click on them to configure their settings, like pasting in an API key or choosing a specific AI model, and then you draw lines connecting them to show how data or control flows from one step to the next.
In this modular approach, it makes things flexible.
Incredibly flexible. You can easily swap out nodes, reroute connections, add new steps, and because it's visual, you can actually see the structure of your AI application, which makes understanding it, debugging it, and changing it way easier than digging through lines of code.
Now, the sources mention there aren't just one type of canvas or builder, but three main ones within Flowise, tailored for different things.
Precisely. The introduction part of the docs clearly lays out three main visual builders: Assistant, Chat Flow, and Agent Flow.
Assistant, Chat Flow, Agent Flow.
Okay. And they're kind of progressive. Assistant is the simplest, Agent Flow is the most complex. They're designed to let you start simple and gradually build more sophisticated AI systems as you get comfortable or as your needs grow.
Let's start with the first one then, the Assistant Builder, described as the most beginner-friendly.
Yes, that's positioned as the easiest entry point. It's specifically designed for creating conversational AI agents like chatbots.
What can assistants built here do?
They follow instructions you give them, like a system prompt defining their personality or goal. They can use external tools, we'll talk more about those later, to perform actions like searching the web. And importantly, they can access knowledge from documents you upload using archival augmented generation.
RAG, right. So they can answer questions based on specific files you give them.
Exactly. So if you need a relatively simple Q&A bot for your website based on your product manuals, or a basic assistant that can answer questions and maybe look up today's weather using a tool, the Assistant Builder is designed for that. It hides some of the more complex options you see in the other builders.
Streamlined for basic conversational agents. Makes sense. What about the next level up, the Chat Flow Builder?
Chatflow offers more flexibility and control. You can still build chatbots here, but it's also designed for what they call single-agent systems and more general LLM flows that might not just be simple Q&A.
Single-agent systems.
Okay.
And more flexibility means?
It means you can use more advanced techniques. The sources mention things like GraphR, which is a more sophisticated way to structure and query your knowledge using graph databases. You can use re-ranker nodes. These components help improve the quality of search results before they get sent to the LLM for answering.
So making the RAG part smarter.
Right. And importantly, Chatflow lets you use custom code nodes. So if there's a very specific step you need that isn't covered by a pre-built node, you can actually write a bit of code right there in the workflow for that specific task.
Okay, so Chatflow is for when your single AI agent needs maybe more complex logic inside, better search, or some custom code integration that the basic Assistant Builder doesn't offer.
That's the key difference. It gives you a broader toolkit and allows for more intricate connections within that single agent's workflow. More power, slightly more complexity than the Assistant Builder.
And then the top tier, the most powerful one, Agent Flow. The sources called it a superset of the other two.
Agent Flow is where you really unlock the ability to design potentially very complex AI systems. It includes the capabilities of Assistant and Chatflow. You could build a simple chatbot in Agent Flow if you wanted to, but its unique power lies in designing multi-agent systems and handling complex workflow orchestration.
Multi-agent systems. What does that actually look like in practice?
This is where it gets really interesting. Instead of just one AI doing everything step by step, you can design a system where multiple distinct AI agents work together.
Multiple AIs.
Yeah. Each agent could have its own specific instructions, its own set of tools, maybe even its own dedicated knowledge base. You can assign them different roles or tasks within the overall workflow. And Agent Flow lets you design how these different agents interact, share information, and collaborate to solve a bigger problem.
Wow, okay, so it's like orchestrating a team of specialized AIs.
Exactly. Agent Flow is the environment where you design that collaboration. It's crucial for tackling problems that are too big or too varied for one single AI. You break the problem down, assign parts to specialized agents, and Agent Flow manages how they work together, the sequence, any parallel tasks, conditional logic. It's much more sophisticated orchestration than a simple linear chain.
That sounds incredibly powerful, moving beyond just a single chatbot or tool.
It really opens up possibilities for complex automation and problem solving.
Okay, so we have these three builders, Assistant, Chatflow, Agent Flow as the environments. Now, what about the actual pieces we're connecting inside them, the nodes? The sources suggested Flowise has a huge library of these building blocks.
It really does. This component library is a massive part of Flowise's value proposition. It comes packed with pre-built nodes covering almost everything you'd commonly need. You just find the node you need, drag it onto your canvas, tweak its settings, and connect it up.
Let's talk about some key categories, starting with the absolute core. The language models themselves, the LLMs.
Flowise shines here with incredibly broad support. It integrates with a ton of LLMs and chat models from many different providers.
Like who?
Well, you've got the big commercial names, OpenAI, GPT models, Anthropic, Claude models, Cohere, Google, both their standard generative AI and the enterprise Vertex AI services, Azure OpenAI,
Okay, the usual suspects.
but it goes way beyond that. Huge support for open source models, too, often via platforms like Hugging Face, direct integrations with Mistral AI models, Llama, which is fantastic because it lets you run models locally on your own machine.
Running locally, yeah, that's big.
Together AI and even more specialized platforms like AWS Bedrock, NVIDIA's NIM, IBM watsonx, Replicate, and Grok, which is known for really fast inference speed.
That is an incredibly diverse list. Why is having support for so many different models such a big deal?
It gives you immense flexibility. You're not locked into one vendor. You can pick the best model for your specific task based on its strengths, its cost, how fast it runs, its privacy implications, whether it's open source. You can mix and match. Maybe use a powerful, expensive model for complex reasoning and a cheaper, faster open source one for simpler summarization, all in the same workflow.
So you can tailor the AI brain to the specific job and budget.
Precisely. And as new models come out, Flowise tends to add support so you can easily swap them into your existing flows. It's very future-proof in that sense.
Okay, models are central. But AI often needs specific information, right? Stuff that wasn't in its training data. That's where data integration comes in document loaders and vector stores for ag.
Exactly. This is absolutely fundamental for building AIs that know about your specific stuff, your company's documents, your product info, etc., enabling that RAG capability we mentioned.
So how do document loaders work?
Flowise provides a whole suite of document loader nodes to pull data in from all sorts of places. The sources list loaders for common files like PDF, CSV, Word documents, docx, plain text, JSON,
The basics.
but also much more. Loaders for pulling code or issues from GitHub, content from Notion pages, Confluent Spaces, Gitbook documentation sites. There are several types of web scrapers, Cheerio, Puppeteer, Playwright, even general-purpose web crawlers. Loaders for APIs, files stored in AWS S3 buckets, data from Airtable bases, and just standard local file and folder loaders. Plus, nodes to load data from existing document stores or vector stores back into a flow.
Wow, that covers pretty much anywhere data might live.
Yeah.
So the loaders get the data in. How do vector stores fit in? What do they do?
Okay, so you've loaded your documents.
Huh.
To make them searchable for the AI in an intelligent way for RAG, you usually process them first. Often using a text splitter node, Flowise has many types, to break long documents into smaller chunks. Then you use an embeddings model node again. Flowise supports many providers for this to convert each chunk of text into a list of numbers, an embedding. This embedding captures the meaning of the text. The vector store is where you store all these numerical embeddings. It's like a special database optimized for finding embeddings that are similar in meaning.
Similar meaning, so it's not just keyword search.
Exactly. When a user asks a question, you convert the question into embedding too. The vector store can then very, very quickly find the chunks of your original documents whose embeddings are mathematically closest or most similar to the question's embedding. Those are the most relevant pieces of information to answer the question.
Got it. So the vector store is the super fast search index for finding relevant context based on meaning. What vector stores does Flowise support?
Again, a huge list reflecting the popularity of this tech. Pinecone, Chroma, Qdrunt, Redis, Weaviate, AstraDB from DataStax, Couchbase, Elasticsearch, Face, which is more of a library but integrated, simple in-memory stores for quick tests, Milvus, MongoDB Atlas Vector Search, OpenSearch, Postgres, using the popular pgvector extension, single store, Supabase, also using pgvector, Upstatch Vector, Victara, and Zep.
That's comprehensive, so you can likely plug into whatever vector tech you're already using or choose one that fits your scale and budget.
Right. The combination of all these loaders, splitters, embeddings nodes, and vector store integrations gives you the complete visual toolkit within Flowise to build really powerful custom knowledge bases for your AI.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. For chatbots or any conversational AI, remembering the history of the chat is vital, isn't it? That's handled by memory nodes.
Yes, absolutely essential. Without memory, every turn of the conversation is isolated, which feels unnatural. Flowise provides different types of memory nodes to manage this context.
What kinds are there?
The sources list a few approaches. Simple buffer memory just stores the entire raw chat history. Buffer window memory is useful. It only keeps, say, the last 5 or 10 turns of the conversation to prevent the context sent to the LLM from getting too long and expensive.
Keeps it focused.
There's also conversation summary memory, where the AI actually summarizes the conversation as it goes along, keeping the summary its context, and variations like conversation summary buffer memory. Plus, for memory that needs to last between sessions or be shared, there are nodes that store the memory externally in databases like DynamoDB, MongoDB Atlas, Redis, Redis, or Zep.
So you choose the memory type based on how long the context needs to be, whether it needs to persist.
Exactly. It lets you configure how the AI remembers and uses past interactions, which is crucial for anything beyond a one-shot Q&A.
And we touched on this with the Assistant Builder, but agents often need to do things, right?
Yep.
Access real-time info, perform actions. That's where tools come in.
Tools are where Flowise agents get their superpowers, letting them interact with the outside world or perform specific functions beyond just text manipulation. The list of built-in tool nodes is really impressive.
Like what kind of tools?
Well, simple things like a calculator node, but also various search API tools to get live web results. They list Brave Search, Excess Search, Google Custom Search, Search API, CRXNG, SERP API, Serper, Tavily, plus a generic web browser tool that can scrape websites.
So I can look things up online.
Yes. Tools for file operations, read file, write file, nodes for making generic HTTP requests, DET, and POST to interact with almost any API. There's even an OpenAPI toolkit for interacting specifically with APIs described using the OpenAPI standard.
Wow.
Plus a code interpreter node to run Python or JavaScript snippets safely. A retriever tool specifically designed to let the agent query the knowledge bases we just talked about. Tools to trigger other Flowise workflows, chain tool, chat flow tool, and importantly, a custom tool node letting you define your own tool if none of the built-in ones fit.
This is where it really becomes an agent, doesn't it? An AI that can, say, search the web using Tavily, then use the calculator, then use the write file tool to save a report, all visually connected.
Precisely. Tools transform the AI from just processing text to being an active participant that can fetch data, do calculations, interact with other systems. Combining tools is where you build really capable agents. Flowise provides the framework to define how and when the AI decides to use these tools based on the conversation or the workflow logic.
Okay, besides those big ones, models, data reg, memory, tools, the sources listed other useful node categories too. Things like chains, prompts, output parsers, text splitters, retrievers. These seem more about structuring the flow.
Yes, these are crucial for refining the workflow, guiding the LLM, and handling the inputs and outputs cleanly. Chains are prepackaged sequences of nodes for common tasks, like a conversational retrieval QA chain that bundles memory, RAID retrieval, and an LLM call.
Ah, shortcuts for common patterns.
Exactly. Prompts are vital for telling the LLM what to do. Flowise has templates like Chat Prompt Template and Few-Shot Prompt Template to help you structure your instructions effectively. Output parsers are super useful. They take the often unstructured text response from the LLM and try to format it into something structured, like CSV data or a JSON object.
Making the output usable by other systems.
Right. Text splitters, as we said, break down documents for RAG. And retrievers handle the actual querying of the vector store, with options for things like adding a re-ranker step to improve relevance or filtering results.
So these are the components that add the necessary structure, logic, and precision. They let you build more than just a simple LLM call. You build a robust pipeline.
That's a great way to put it. They provide the control and refinement needed for sophisticated, multi-step AI applications.
Okay, we've covered the building blocks, the nodes, and the environments where you connect them, the builders. Now let's talk about what you can actually make. What practical solutions can you build with Flowise? The how to use FlowiseAI source had some good examples.
Yeah, this is where it all comes together, turning those components into functional, useful applications.
One of the most obvious ones mentioned is building chatbots.
Definitely a core use case. Flowise makes it easier by providing those conversation chain and memory nodes right out of the box. The sources highlight things like easily customizing the bot's personality with system prompts, adding features like letting users upload files or give feedback within the chat, and offering flexible ways to deploy the chatbot.
Deploy, like how?
You can get an API endpoint for your finished chatbot so other applications can talk to it. Or you can get embeddable code, like an iframe or a chat bubble script, to put it directly onto your website. Or just share it using a public URL generated by Flowise.
And the typical examples are things like customer support bots, maybe lead generation on a website, or user engagement tools.
Right. Flowise gives you the tools to build intelligent, context-aware bots for those kinds of conversational tasks, going beyond simple keyword matching.
Another big one, leveraging that RGA capability we talked about, is creating custom knowledge bases for Q&A.
Yes, this is super powerful. Building an AI that's an expert specifically on your information. The process involves using those document loaders to ingest your data, processing it with splitters and embeddings, and indexing it in a vector store like Pinecone, which was used as an example.
And the main benefit is?
Getting precise, context-aware answers to questions based only on that specific knowledge base. The AI isn't just using its general training data, it's answering based on your manuals, your reports, your internal wiki.
So you can turn an LLM into an expert on your company's specific documentation or research.
Precisely. It transforms a general AI into a specialist. And because it can handle different file types like PDFs, Word docs, CSVs, you can pull knowledge from lots of existing sources. Huge for internal knowledge sharing, specialized support, things like that.
Then there were the more advanced applications, like designing multi-agent workflows, using that agent flow builder.
Right. This is where you design systems with multiple AIs collaborating. The idea is to assign different roles or tasks to specialized agents within the workflow. This can make the whole process more efficient and leverage the strengths of different agents or models for specific parts of the task.
Can you flesh out those examples? The source mentions software development and knowledge gathering.
Okay, software dev. Imagine an agent flow. First, an ideation agent takes a user request like write a Python function for X. It passes that to a coding agent using a code interpreter tool to write the code. That code then goes to a reviewer agent, which uses an LLM to check for bugs or style issues. Maybe then to a documentation agent to write comments and usage instructions, saving the result with a write file tool. Agent flow orchestrates this whole assembly line.
Like a virtual dev team.
Kind of, for knowledge gathering. Maybe one agent uses multiple search tools to find info online, passes findings to a summarizer agent, which then sends the summary to a report writing agent that formats it nicely.
Gotcha. Agent Flow acts as the project manager coordinating these specialized AI workers. It lets you tackle bigger multi-step problems.
Exactly. Breaking down complexity into manageable specialized roles for different agents.
And for tasks needing a strict order or conditional logic, there was implementing sequential workflows.
This is about defining clear execution paths. Flowise lets you connect nodes sequentially, obviously, but it also provides nodes for conditional logic, if-then-else is branching, and loops repeat these steps. This lets you build workflows that aren't just linear, but can adapt based on conditions.
So the workflow can change its path dynamically.
Yes, like a support bot. First, try answering from the knowledge base, RAG. If the answer confidence is low, condition, then escalate to a human or maybe try a more powerful LLM, different path. Or a content generator that loops through a list of topics, generates a draft for each, then sends each draft through a fixed review sequence, adds control flow.
The how-to-use source also listed a few other interesting advanced uses.
Yeah, just showing the breadth. Things like extracting structured data, like invoice numbers, dates, amounts from unstructured PDFs or documents. You'd use an LLM prompted to find specific fields, then an output parser to get clean JSON.
Useful.
Building research agents that actively use the web search tools to gather and analyze real-time info. And, as we've discussed, really sophisticated customer support agents connected to custom knowledge bases and maybe tools to look up customer orders or create support tickets in external systems. They all show how you combine the core components in different ways to solve real problems.
It's clear you can build impressive stuff inside Flowise, but often these solutions need to talk to the outside world. Which brings us to integrations. The docs mentioned an external integrations category.
Right. Flowise isn't meant to be totally isolated. The docs mention Zapier, for instance, which is huge because Zapier connects to thousands of other apps. But one of the practical articles, the Geeky Gadgets one, gave a really specific example, integrating with Telegram.
Telegram, the messaging app, how does that work with Flowise?
The article explains how you can connect your Flowise agent to a Telegram bot, so users can interact with your AI directly within their Telegram chat.
How do you make that connection?
It suggests using automation platforms like NAN or Make.com as a bridge. These tools can receive messages from the Telegram bot API, send them to your Flowise Workflows API endpoint for processing, get the response back from Flowise, and then send that response back to the user in Telegram.
I see. So NAN or Make handles the plumbing between Telegram and Flowise.
Essentially, yes. And the benefits highlighted were things like maintaining conversation history, using Flowise's memory, getting instant AI responses right in the chat app, and using Telegram's familiar interface.
So it makes your Flowise AI accessible on a platform people already use heavily.
Exactly. It shows Flowise can be the brain behind bots or agents operating on different front ends or messaging channels.
Okay, great. To wrap things up, that same Geeky Gadgets article also offered some best practices, practical tips for using Flowise effectively.
Yeah, these seem like really useful, grounded pieces of advice based on actually using the platform, aimed at helping you build better solutions.
What were some of the main ones?
Well, it's strongly recommended using the more advanced LLMs, specifically mentioning things like GPT-4, when you need high-quality output, complex reasoning, or nuanced understanding. Basically, choose the right tool for the job. Don't use a weak model for a hard task.
Makes sense?
It also talked about balancing cost, using free or cheaper models where possible for simple things, but strategically using the more powerful and often paid models when the task demands it, optimizing your budget without sacrificing quality where it matters.
Smart. Anything else?
Yeah, optimizing the workflows themselves, like designing your prompts so the LLM gives you structured output like JSON when possible, which makes it easier to process later. Using iterative feedback loops, build, test, refine, repeat. And being really clear about the purpose and tasks for each part of your workflow or each agent you design.
So even with a user-friendly low-code tool like Flowise, success isn't automatic. You still need to understand the AI, choose models wisely, and be thoughtful about how you design and refine your workflows.
Precisely. The visual interface makes building faster and opens it up to more people, but the core principles of working effectively with LLMs and designing good systems still apply. The best practices really emphasize combining Flowise's ease of use with that solid understanding for the best results.
We have definitely covered a lot of ground today in this deep dive on Flowise AI, pulling from those docs and articles. We've seen it's this open source, low-code platform aiming to make building AI agents and complex workflows much more accessible.
hmm We looked at the different ways to get started local for privacy, the cloud for scale using lots of different platforms, or the easy managed Flowise cloud option. We unpacked the three visual builders: Assistant for simple chats, Chat Flow for more flexible single agents, and Agent Flow for powerful multi-agent collaboration.
And we spent a good chunk of time on those building blocks, the nodes, connecting to tons of different LLMs, bringing in your own data with document loaders and vector stores for ARG, adding memory for conversation context, giving the AI abilities with tools, and structuring everything with chains, prompts, and parsers.
Yeah, and then we saw what you can build: advanced chatbots, custom Q&A systems over your data, complex collaborating agent teams, workflows with sequential logic, and how integrations, like that Telegram example, let these creations interact with the wider world. Hopefully this gives you, the listener, a really solid understanding of Flowise and how it might lower that barrier to building cool AI stuff.
It really does feel like a tool that could significantly speed up innovation just by letting more people build and experiment with AI directly.
Yeah, I think so too.
So thinking about all this, the power and the visual flexibility of Flowise AI, what unique problem out there could you solve with it? Or what kind of intelligent agent could you imagine creating using a platform like this? Something to think about.